He slapped the money out of my hand. Then he slapped me open palm right across the cheek that still burned as the whole store went quiet. You know, that heavy quiet, where everyone looks but no one sees. The old woman in the faded peacoat clutched her soup and bread like they weighed 100 pounds. The cashier rolled her eyes like kindness was a scam, and my manager, Kurt Delaney, leaned in and hissed, "You're fired, get out." Like decency had a price tag. I wasn't allowed to touch. I should have walked. I should have swallowed it and disappeared the way people like me learn to disappear. But I came back the next morning with a bruise on my face and my badge in my pocket, because bullies don't get to pick my exit, because that woman was still a person to me. The doors slid open, and the room shifted. A tall man in a navy coat stepped in with 2 assistants, and that "don't waste my time" calm money buys. Everybody knew him. Logan, Barrett, owner of Harbor Mart, the name you see on magazine covers but never at the register. He looked at me, at Kurt, at the old woman hiding near the carts, and said, "Cool as winter. She doesn't need security, she needs a promotion then." He turned to Kurt, "You need to clear your desk." Brittany, the cashier, gasped, like air wasn't free. The line froze, my mouth went dry. And then Logan did the thing that made the floor tilt. He walked to the old woman and put a hand on her shoulder like it belonged there. "This is my mother. She shops my stores to see how people are treated when nobody thinks it matters." And all I could think was, yeah, that happened. The test walked in wearing a pea coat, and we failed it in front of God and coupons. "Name," he said, and I croaked, "Nia Carter," and he nodded like he'd been waiting for it. "Effective immediately, Director of Community Care Office Salary Authority, to make sure no one in our stores is treated the way you were." And I stood there holding my breath like it might run away if I let it go. That night at my kitchen table with the flickering light and the chipped mug, I loved too much. My mother Ruth stirred soup like it was a spell, and my niece Z drew superheroes on the couch, and I tried to explain how a slap turned into a title, how humiliation turned into a job description, how impossible gets real so fast you're afraid it'll vanish if you say it out loud. "Feels like too much," I said, and Mama set her hand on mine, warm and steady. "Baby, you've been directing your whole life. You keep folks from falling. You pick up what others drop, and you see what people refuse to see. Titles are name tags, soul is the job." The next morning I stepped into Harbor Mart headquarters, glass and hush and carpet that makes you whisper, and Logan met me over Lake Erie, gray and patient. "Not optics," he said. "We're doing this for real: food, access, partnerships, scholarships, listening sessions with teeth." And I told him the truth. I've never led anything. And he told me a better truth. You've kept people safe. That's leadership. I went back to the store because I needed to see it with new eyes. We put a stool behind Register 3 because Miss D's ankles swell by noon. We set folding chairs in produce. Voices matter. And at first folks hugged the walls like the air might bite. Then Ronnie stood up, knees aching. "They write me up for going too slow," and Carla said, "I asked for a schedule change to care for my grandma." They cut my hours, and I wrote it down because pain on paper stops being rumor. Good spreads, slow and ugly moves like gossip emails crept in from the Midwest, calling what we did excessive empathy, a VP wrote. I was a symbol of misplaced guilt, and I took a red-eye to Chicago, where the wind slapped harder than Kurt ever did. A young stalker named Devin whispered, "They told us not to talk to you, said it's for show, complain, and your hours vanish." And in another break room, an elderly cashier sat on a milk crate with swollen feet wrapped in gauze. "They say I can't sit, looks lazy," and I stood in that doorway with heat in my ribs and said into the phone, "Get her a stool, get them chairs, get this policy off the wall and into the room." Omar from HR brought a folder that felt like a punch donation. Logs didn't match what pantries received 4,000, reported 1,800, received the rest slipping out the back, to vendors for cash, not bad math, theft dressed up as charity, and the kind of betrayal that makes you talk quiet because the anger is loud enough. We launched an internal investigation. Nobody clapped. My office got tossed on a weekend, files missing a sticky note that read, "Back off, not everything needs fixing." And I fed it to the shredder and went home late and told Mama it was traffic, told my chest it was war. We held a town hall. I stood behind a too-bright podium with my palms sweating. I was fired in a harbor mart for helping a woman pay for soup. If your policy punishes basic decency, it's not policy, it's cruelty. The clip traveled. The way clips do, chopped and praised and dragged. NPR called and said, "Talk like you're telling the truth at Thanksgiving." And I did. Justice isn't loud. It's consistent. It's a stool behind a register, so a grandmother doesn't ache for 8 hours. And while the thank you notes arrived, the knives came too. Emails that said, "Go back to cleaning," a voicemail that sneered, "You think you're Harriet? You're a maid with a microphone." And Mama, God bless her, said, "When the devil starts talking dirty, heaven's getting close," so we kept going. We built the Foundation Project, peer advocates in every store, pay transparency dashboards, water that's cold, chairs that don't wobble, tiny things that stack up to dignity. And then another folder landed on my desk with my name in it. Shonda Pierce, the new manager I'd called a change maker, had been skimming pennies off staff bonuses, not a heist, a drip, which somehow felt worse, and I slid the papers across the table and asked, "Tell me what this is," and she said, "They still got raises." I took what they wouldn't notice, and I said, "We're not in shadows anymore." And she fired back, "You fly around, giving speeches like you forgot where you started." And I said, "I never forgot. I just refused to use it as an excuse to do wrong." And she said she'd resign, and I said, "No. You'll apologize face to face, and then you'll stay and fix what you broke, because accountability without a path back isn't justice. It's theater," and she did, voice shaking, room breathing. Not forgiveness yet, but a start. The work pushed past our aisles because the problem was bigger than our price tags. We drafted the Worker Dignity Act of Ohio with legal nerds and elders who've been in this trench longer than me. Wage transparency, whistleblower protection worker, seats on internal ethics boards, mandatory rest stools at customer-facing stations, public audits of charitable claims. People called it radical, I called it overdue. And the hearings packed out, nurses in scrubs, janitors in uniforms, retirees in Sunday best, lobbyists with perfect hair. And the chair asked if I really believed government should step into the bond between employer and employee. I believe government should protect people who can't afford lawyers, and a senator warned costs would rise and jobs would suffer. If your business model depends on exploitation, maybe it shouldn't grow, and the gavel slammed while the room made a sound that was half cheer, half grief. Threats escalated. A flyer slid under my door. "Stay in place," an email with a grainy photo of Z walking home, and that one took my breath in both hands, so I called a press conference and said the quiet part out loud. "My family's been threatened, not because I'm dangerous, because I'm effective. I won't be moved, not because I'm fearless, because I've seen what happens when people like me are forced to sit down, and when you drag bullies into daylight, they still try, they just have to squint." The vote came on a gray morning that felt like a held note downtown, humming like a drum signs on both sides of the steps. Dignity is a right facing, keep government out of business. And I sat in the gallery between Omar and Mama, her church fan folded tight, her lips moving, and the roll call swung, yes, no, no, yes, like a porch light flicking. And Senator Mendez, the human weather vane, stood and looked straight at me. My father was a janitor, arthritis in every joint, pride in every step, how a state treats its workers tells you its soul, I vote yes. And the tally read 17 to 16, and the air didn't explode, it exhaled long and relieved. Cameras hit like hail on the steps, and I said, this isn't a win for a bill. It's a win for every person who folded a dollar, because it had to last for every worker who whispered, one day, today is not the finish line. It's the start of a better map, and by dinner a coalition promised lawsuits. Cable news painted me saint and menace in the same hour, and Z handed me a drawing of a staircase and a woman in a hard hat and said, that's you, and I thought, yeah, I guess it is. We rolled out the unglamorous part implementation hubs in Cleveland and Toledo, and Youngstown training managers to comply without games. Publishing. Wage bans, building worker councils with real votes, spending money that made us better, and at the National Corporate Forum under chandeliers and hors d'oeuvres. I can't pronounce, I told a room of executives. I'm not selling training. I'm telling you that success measured only in profit is failure with good PR measure, dignity, and build that. Some clapped because it was safe. Some clapped because it hurt. Some stared like I scratched their car. The signing ceremony was small under a white canopy. A string quartet played, Lift Every Voice and Sing Slow Enough to Feel, and Miss D wore her Sunday hat and stood taller because Register 3 had a stool now. And after the governor signed, I said one more simple thing. Ink on paper is only a start. The rest is how we live it in break rooms, in schedules, in the way we greet strangers and don't let them disappear. That night on the roof with Z, I lit Mama's little candle for when the light goes out, but we refused to. We watched it shimmy in the lake breeze, and Z asked, "Are you done now?" And I said, "Not done, just at a resting point." And she said, "Grandma says you're a spark," and I said, "Then we better make it a good fire." I know some of you think I pushed too far. Some of you think I didn't push nearly enough. You know what I mean? So tell me in the comments, what dignity looks like to you. Tell me where you've seen it, given or stolen. Tell me the policy that turned out to be a bias. Wearing a tie, argue with me if you need to, agree if you must. But don't be silent, like, share. Subscribe if you want more stories that start with a bruise and end with a blueprint. And if you see someone counting coins at a register, don't look away. We build the future with our hands. The only question is what we're willing to light.